Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wi-Fi Sheep tech video with me, Tom. A little bit different for this one, as I just want to have a discussion about a recent development that I don't think is going to get much coverage here on YouTube. I'm not going to appear on camera for this one because I have had a horrendous cold for the past week, I think now, something like that. And basically I look like a bit of a train wreck, so I thought I'd spare you that. Also, just to say apologies for not being around much online with the channel. We've switched our broadband provider over and it has taken the best part of 10 days. Trying to basically work at home self-employed like I do without a decent broadband connection for well over a week is an utter nightmare. I'm actually quite proud how well we survived, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, many of you that are regulars to the channel will know that I'm quite passionate about BBC Micro and Acorn computer products, and that I'm also used the RISC OS operating system. Now, if you go to the Raspberry Pi website and you click on downloads, and if you pass the main Raspbian Linux that you're meant to use and scroll down the bottom, I have shown this before, you've got RISC OS here as a non-Linux distribution. And RISC OS started life as the official operating system for the Acorn Archimedes, which was the replacement for the original BBC Micro back in 1987, and has survived the collapse of Acorn in 1998 and found itself ported over a good few years ago now to the Raspberry Pis. We're talking back I want to say 2012, it might have been 2013. Anyway, the Raspberry Pi version was free to use and was technically meant to be open source, the first time the source code had been open source. However, it was owned by a company called Castle Technologies that bought a lot of the assets up from Acorn, or actually from Pace Microelectronics, I believe they were called, a few years prior. And basically, they had put a licensing agreement on. So anyone who wanted to use RISC OS for any commercial operation, and that included putting it on the Raspberry Pi version on an SD card and then selling that as part of a Raspberry Pi kit, you had to pay a license fee. I was one of those people under my iDent Computer brand who was actually doing this. The problem is, RISC OS isn't very good. It's way behind Linux in what it's meant to be able to do. It doesn't have half the tech support or the software support of a modern operating system. And the modern operating systems, even like Raspbian Linux, Debian, Ubuntu, are completely free to use. And I got to the point of thinking, why am I paying for something that's substandard? It has its benefits, don't get me wrong, but it also is hugely substandard in a lot of areas. So basically, I just stopped. I went, I've had enough. I've done it, and I licensed out my products to a commercial rival called RISC OS Bits. So yes, here you can see under cases, this is riscosbits.co.uk, and under cases, you'll find the RISC CE system. And basically, this was my 3D print kit computer system that you may be aware of. I have shown it here on Wi-Fi Sheet before. And for the RISC OS Acorn market, I licensed it out to RISC OS Bits, and we created a new product implementing some of their core technologies, and you can see some of the price points on the website. You can link through to my own website where I still are selling the Linux version of the kit, so it's still on the market, it's still available, but that's riscosbits.co.uk for that. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is that it wasn't commercially viable to carry on. However, in the past week or so, a company called RISC OS Developments, which formed 2 years ago, out of the blue, bought Castle. And by buying Castle, they bought the rights to RISC OS. So they now own the operating system. Interesting move, but I was then thinking, well, does that mean the licensing is going to end? Is the Raspberry Pi version going to end? Is that it? Is it done? Are we finished? No, apparently not. If we go over to the RISC OS Open website, that's riscosopen.org, and we click on News, this post went up, and this was literally about 24 hours ago now, so I'm recording this on the 23rd of October, so this went up on the 22nd. RISC OS Open for Business. And basically it stated that RISC OS was going to change its license and go completely open source under the Apache 2 license. What this means is there's now no need to pay any commercial license fee to use this operating system, which means potentially we can do a lot more with it, and we're not bound by restrictive licensing agreements that just didn't make this OS particularly attractive. If we look at the register, it's actually made big time news, if you class the register as big time. Many people do. So here we are, roughly 30 years after its birth. Acorn Computer's RISC OS is going open source. Strictly speaking, it was open source before. You just couldn't use it commercially for anything without having to pay. And then when you did pay and you developed something that was unique to your company, an IP, you then had to surrender it back to the main source pool. So there was no point developing anything because you couldn't keep hold of any of your intellectual property until now. So it's mainly a history lesson, a few YouTube videos, none of mine used, sadly, but probably is a good thing actually, but never mind. Yeah. So if we go back to RISC OS Open, let's just have a quick look on the forums, because there's obviously been some discussion under announcements. You can have a look at all these sites for yourself. I will include all the links below in the description. So we say we're open for business, and you can read it all yourself. There's a lot of what I would describe as the normal crowd, sort of core RISC OS users, who are kind of, some are welcoming it, some are sort of pleading doom and gloom, but they've been pleading doom and gloom for the past 20 years, so no change there. However, what do I think this actually means for me? Well, I think as far as Wi-Fi ship goes, and of course I don't computer, it does mean potentially it's going to be possibly more attractive to write code for RISC OS. If you see my other videos, I did one quite recently, you'll notice that RISC OS supports BBC Basic because that's where it's come from. It's native from the BBC Micro. It's a good hobbyist OS. It runs really fast. You can do things with the Raspberry Pi with it, GPIO, electronics outbreak projects. The OS is very open once you actually get into it. So you can write modules, you can write ARM machine code, you can compile C against it. You can even run a version of Python if you want to. So it does have a lot of advantages, and it's a fun play OS. However, it's lacking a lot of core support. So Wi-Fi is not supported. The web browsers are appalling. You can't get a decent HTML5 web browser, so you're limited in what you can do. I mean, some of the web browsers can barely run JavaScript. It's not good. It really isn't good. So your YouTube, your social media, your Facebooks are completely out on RISC OS. It just isn't going to work at the moment. Video is not great. And also things like copy and paste function in the operating system just seems to be missing. The copy and paste is, that simple Control-C, Control-V or Control-X type thing, cut, copy, paste, just it's not really there. It is kind of an implementation, but it's about, again, it was done in sort of the early 90s when, things were still kind of be worked out in the OS world. The networking stack needs updating. The sort of tools for internet and networking are hugely out of date. I mean, a lot of it is still Acorn branded from the mid 90s in the day of dial-up. So it needs work. That's not to dismiss the huge amount of work that the good people of the RISC OS community have put into getting this operating system up to a decent standard. And also those that continue to develop new products and code for the operating system. I mean, some of them I know are very, very good friends of mine. But there's also a lot of stuff that just hasn't been updated for 10, 20 years, and it wasn't particularly wonderful when it came out. And there does seem to be this attitude with the operating system for people going, oh, well, it was fine in my day, so it's fine now. Well, it isn't. And if we're going to bring RISC OS to a new audience, people who are not going to have the nostalgia fest of the 80s or the 1990s, we're talking people born post-2000 here, this OS is going to have to do something. It's going to have a unique selling point. It's going to have to do something that is going to be attractive to try and compete with the hobbyist bases of Linux, which I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I mean, I want to support it and go forward and see what we can do. But I think a sole RISC OS solution with, let's say, what I want to do in teaching and education isn't going to happen. As you can see with this demonstration from one of my own RISC OS builds when I was licensing it, We're missing key products like we don't have a decent Office suite, so we don't have LibreOffice, and things like Scratch, the sort of core coding, early learning programming coding software from MIT isn't on RISC OS. Here is a demo. You can see how I got it to run by having a twin stack ident CE systems. That's 2 Raspberry Pis. One was running a custom Raspbian build, the other with RISC OS, and I was VNCing 2 desktops on top of each other to sort of give me the applications. But the problem with that is that you might just say, well, why not just scrap the RISC OS thing and just use the far superior Linux? And that is the problem at the moment. So we'll wait and see what happens. I will be doing some follow-up with RISC OS just for some fun hobbyist projects, because the basic is fun to write with. So it's not all doom and gloom, and I really look forward to some major improvements. And if you want to have a look at any of these sites yourself, the links are all in the description. Once again, thank you so much for watching, or in this case, listening to me. And we'll see you real soon, right here on the Wi-Fi Sheep channel. Bye for now.